And we're back here once again with another episode of the Iron Man Podcast, episode 604, with Mr. Lunchbox Warren. Once again, this is going to be his second appearance. He was the indie comic book creator who is the creator of the series Adventures of Sig and Joe. Now, I like to always mention when I do these episodes now, because they're on YouTube as well as Rumble, all of the episodes from this show, episodes 1 through 499, were on Rumble first. So if there's any second appearances of someone, or third or fourth or fifth appearances, they'll also be on the podcast platform as well. If you never got a chance to watch those episodes, as well as watching them on Rumble for free, you don't have to follow. You can just go and search all the content up there. Episodes are all in order because, as you guys know, this show is on here from episodes 500 onwards. So just in case you want to know, well, if it's a second appearance and where the hell is the other one? Well, you got to go look for it. Let's just say that. All right. So it's been a while, man. How you been doing?
Listen, I've been doing good. In these turbulent times, everything's going pretty good on my end.
That's pretty good, honestly, because recently, the indie comic book scene has been going through some interesting notions, let's just say.
A massive contraction, if you will.
Like, there are so many people that have so many ideas. They say them, and they're always talking in this like certain way where I don't know, for me as a person, if I have an idea, I really want to do it, I will eventually do it. And you can't just always just do an idea, because that's just not how things work. But like, you hear all these people always talking about these things consistently, and it's like, at some point we do have to actually do them. Talking is only gonna do just like so much. Like, and I always tell people this, given the fact that indie is such an interesting thing and not as mainstream as Marvel, DC, Image, IDW, Dark Horse, even Valiant's coming back now. So that's another competitor that's going to be putting out books. And they at some point had such big financial problems that they only dropped a single title a month. People don't understand when it comes to like comics, indie people are just going to be unknown. So whenever I hear comments of like, well, are we ever going to put out a character that's like better than Spider-Man or Superman or X-Men? It's like, it's not that you probably can't. The problem is that like Marvel and DC and these other companies have been here for so long, to expose people to anything other than that is so hard,
Yeah.
And as someone that is talked to a lot of indie people, writers, authors, creators, all that stuff, that's something that shouldn't even be on your mind. Here's the harsh truth, everyone. You're not going to beat them ever. No one's character is going to be popular than Batman, Superman, X-Men, Spider-Man. Even like random low characters that no one gives a fuck about will be more popular, like Pipe Man, of all people.
Yeah.
Peacemaker will be more popular. That's not something that you should worry about, because when you start worrying about that and start thinking about that, your brain is going to get into this motion of like, well, since they were already here before and they already have every single popular character, I can't do anything better. Like, no, you don't think that will get you down a pretty bad mindset. I just can't. People say, well, at least Eric July, for example, they'll be like, well, Isam's not going to sell more than Spider-Man. I hope Isam doesn't sell more than Spider-Man. It's fucking Spider-Man.
Well,
if
exactly.
If Isam ever outsold Spider-Man, burn Marvel to the absolute ground. No more books ever anymore. Nothing.
Yeah.
And no offense to Eric. I like Eric, as you guys know. I like his books and everything. Issues here and there with his books that I put on my videos as well. But nobody's independent character should outsell Spider-Man. That's crazy. That would be bad on Marvel if you could, which would be terrible for the industry itself. But what do you think, man? You think people are always like setting themselves up to fail with that mindset? I hear it so often.
I think so. I think so, because it's they have to remember, there's people who love Spider-Man who have never read or seen a Spider-Man comic, because Spider-Man has the backing of movies, TV shows, cartoons, bed sheets. The same with Batman. You have people who wear Batman shirts who have never read a Batman comic. So you can't beat that. Like, indies can't reach that level, because you're talking about all you're doing is creating a character with a comic, and that's how people find it, is through that comic. When there are people in Spider-Man, is being found by kids that have absolutely no understanding or access to the actual comic book source that they came from. They'll tell you it came from comics because someone told them that, but they never did discover Spider-Man by walking to an LCS, and then all of a sudden now I'm going to go watch the movies and the cartoons and along those lines.
It's usually quite backwards. Most people discover like the movies and animation and TV first before they even know what comics are.
Yeah. success in indies is this, really, if you want to look at it, is like an Eric July situation where you have enough of a fan base and following that when you can sell your book and you can make more than enough money to keep your business going, but in his case, grow exponentially and continue making more books. That is, as an indie creator, you're just hoping to get enough eyes on you, so then that way you don't have to do a day job. So sometimes it's just that there's no way really, there's no way that an indie comic is going to be able to really
it's going to be so hard to get on that level. Like, people got to factor in the reason why Marvel and DC or even Image can be in the spot they started literally before everybody did, before it ever even became a thing. And people got to factor in comics themselves, were not even like, how do I say this with being nice to people? They were always a niche. It always had a peak to it, even when it was considered really popular, even from the last bastion with what people say was the 90s. Even that had a peak to it. And that's also when the market crashed. It still has now somewhat survived in whatever zombie fight state is in currently. But people need to factor in, even at its heyday, comics always had a peak at it. That's why the corporations that back them knew that if they made movies and shows around them, it would be much more beneficial long term than producing more comics. Keep in mind, they still produce the comics alongside with movies and shows. They just never cared for the comics aspect.
And I would say, if you look at how Disney especially, but with also DC, I don't think Disney honestly cares about the comic end of it. They care about the IPs. Like, I was watching this documentary about how who killed WCW, and one of the problems that the Eric Bischoff was talking about in there was that the people up did not believe in the product. They didn't think that wrestling was an important part of their programs. They didn't believe in so they didn't put any money or time into it. They kind of set up for failure. Right now, when people talk about spinner racks and being in more grocery stores along those lines, you have to remember comics were taken out of grocery stores way before Robert Downey Jr. ever uttered the words, "I am Iron Man."
Yeah.
And the big thing, like, you can't expect a 10 to 15-year-old to want to get to read comics or get into reading comics if they don't have any access to it. So maybe not spinner racks, but even if it was stands in major grocery stores, so the young kid who has the Spider-Man sheets, who's watched No Way Home 100 times, how kids like stuff on repeat, wearing a Spider-Man shirt, and his mom goes to the grocery store, he sees the book, whether it's a compact DC type for $9.99 where they get a bunch of artwork, or if it's Marvel gearing an in-store kind of standard cover, this is for kids comic, they don't have any way to access that. They don't even know they exist. And the idea to expect a 10 to 14-year or 15-year-old to be able to go to an LCS to read these when there's only like 2,000 left in the nation, and sometimes you're asking a 15-year-old to go, "Hey mom, can you drive me 4 towns over to the closest comic book shop, which happens to be in downtown, whatever, and so I could buy a comic." It's like there's many reasons why manga is beating Western comics, but there is a massive problem with the accessibility. You can't expect kids to read them if they can't find them.
This was something that you brought up on Twitter that I wanted to talk about, which was, I've always boiled it down to this: visibility and accessibility, and there's continuity. So I'm able to understand the reason why the continuity is third is because when someone finally does get into comics and they break that barrier, the continuity is so screwed up that might actually turn you off from reading. But you have to actually get into them for that to actually matter. I do agree continuity is the reason why people don't read, but that's a much later on down the road thing. You could give people like isolated stories and they would be perfectly fine. The problem with comics is that it's visibility. If they are not, humans function this way. It's another big example then, and I'll tie it back into my point. The recent crush card virus we had, as a Yu-Gi-Oh term, I can use it for YouTube. People actually believe that if they stood 5 feet away from each other, they wouldn't contract an airborne virus. Okay.
Yeah.
So the average person is not smart. And there's another section of average people that are decently smart, but the most majority of average people, unless it is literally visible in front of them, they do not care if it exists, So for comics to get more people, for people to even just buy them, and for big box retailers to make it worthwhile, they would have to basically put comics in a candy section when you're about to check out. That it would have to be on the racks they have for magazines. Now you have the visibility and accessibility. They're in big box retailers. I think they should be in Walmarts, Targets, Walgreens. You guys have in your area, all those places. Gas stations, liquor stores should be there because obviously everyone buys liquor and everyone needs gas. That's it, right? The problem with that is people have short-term memories. Walmart tried that. Walmart tried doing a Shonen Jump style 100-page giant book for DC characters. They had a lot of the icons on the top of the book. I have them. They did it. They did sell, but they probably didn't sell enough for them to keep up that exclusive deal because they were called 100-page DC Giants. They didn't sell enough. They canceled the deal, honestly, because even as good as that idea is, the problem here is that when you do get a book like that, you're just thrusted into so much shit, you don't even know what's going on. The idea was there. The execution of the actual content of the book needed to have been structured better. They were giving you books where it was like Deathstroke from this era, and they're giving you like Wonder Woman Rebirth, and you're like, well, I don't know if these complement each other at all. Me and my buddy, somebody that owns them, we're like, this is a great idea. But DC themselves fucked it up. Now the compact comic thing is better because it does the manga thing. It's basically their manga-sized books, bigger, fatter, complete story arcs of whatever run of character that they're trying to push onto you. $10 with taxes the same as manga. That's a better idea right there because it does the manga thing cheaper and it gives you a full story arc. Because the problem with comics, people have said, well, you got to wait for the monthlies. That fixes that. You get a whole story all at once. The problem that compact comics are going to run into is because eventually, at some point, let's say 5 years, 6 years down the road, when this keeps going, because they sell so well, they're not stopping that anytime soon. They're going to eventually run out of big stories to tell. Eventually, you will. There's going to be so much shit that you've pushed out because each run of them has to have a big headliner. But this time around, they already blew a good load. They blew Watchmen, Batman Hush, Court of Owls, also Superman is because the movie's coming up with Superman is based on that story arc from Grant Morrison, right? Then you have other little smaller stories like Gotham City Sirens, the Joker one, you have Far Sector. They're always going to give you a buttfuck random character nobody bought when it was on an ongoing series and give it to you in compact comic. At some point, guys, they will run out of big stuff. I'm not saying they'll run out of good content to show you, but like big headliners are going to eventually slow down. On the next DC Compact Comics run, they're not going to do as many headliners. It's Kingdom Come, Batman, Superman, and like Superman Birthright. They know that they have to spread out bangers amongst them because they're going to blow their load so soon. They blew like 2 good Batman ones right there in front of you.
Oh, yeah, I own all the ones that are recently out right now. So.
That's crazy. I own all those too. I just bought them in Compact Comics and I just like them.
But yeah, the size works good. Yeah.
Did you see the compact comics at your local Walmart or anything or Target at all?
Yeah, that's where I first found them was at Target, and then I saw them there because I was going by there to buy manga. Because where I'm at, there's no bookstores in the town I'm in, so then I have to go 30 minutes down the freeway, 45, to get to them like a Barnes and Noble to buy up on manga. So I'm either doing that or I'm doing it through Amazon, but I prefer brick and mortar. But then I went into Target and they started having these big sections of manga, which has practically disappeared now. And then I started seeing DC compacts. I also found the Deadpool Samurai, which is Marvel's doing stuff with Viz Studios. Yeah. And I've also read there's a floppy. I got Avengers and Ultron, which is really
Ultraman.
Ultraman, that's right, not Ultron.
Yeah, I have that too. I just opened that for a haul. Yeah, it was a cool idea. Marvel, unlike DC, they've tried to do stuff like that. Like Marvel's tried to do stuff with like Shonen Jump, and Marvel does their epic collections where they reprint like the older comics in completed story form.
Yeah.
And I don't hate that idea at all. I think it's really, really good. The problem with the price point like that is that $45 for an epic collection starting from the very beginning. Because people say, well, I can't buy comics from that era because they're mostly going to be damaged and going to be like pretty much beat up. Marvel was like, well, we'll just reprint all that older stuff from the beginning with each character. But that's $45 of an investment each time. Even if you get it not on MSRP, the average someone's charging for that is like $30 with tax,
Yeah, they've got to create, and Marvel or DC would be great at this too. If you're going to go back into stores, you need to create either like an MCU connected universe that are the books made directly to go to stores. So we're printing them on different kinds of paper. We're not worried about variants. one cover, and maybe they interconnect between movies. So it's like you've got a team who's writing stories in conjunction with the studios, and so, between No Way Home and Far From Home, we're gonna make this. But they also need to get those price point downs. Like we need to get it from $5, maybe not back to $1.99, but if you get down to like $3, like a $2.99, and get those something that it's easy for kids to grab. They can flip through it, they can get addicted, and then they don't worry about collector. They don't worry about them being damaged because the kids are going to read it and flip through it. Manga, it does that quite well with you're getting 200 pages, and it's not a collector. It's not made to even last long term on your shelf, because I collect manga, but
me too.
At the same time, my books don't hold up that well because it's not made to. It's made to get the hooks in. I'm not saying ignore the collector market. That's where great for LCS is, and I still think that you should be sending stuff there. But if you're going to try to get back into stores and get kids, you need to make that price point go down. DC compacts are a good idea on that. But at the same time, though, I would also try to convert some of those floppies over so it's almost like a newsstand grab, or create. I mean, you could try to create a subscription service where they mail them, but I don't really think that'll work.
That's pretty outdated, but I see your point. Basically, create a hybrid model of like a pull list and be like, hey, you will get this exclusive cover of this compact comic if you order this many, something like that. Like, give people because everyone likes free shit. Give someone the incentive to go to a comic shop for a pull list. Like, because the problem with compact comics, it's not them themselves. It's actually a really good idea. If a store orders them, the ones that'll come that don't sell, unless it's a big character or a big headlining story, who's going to buy Far Sector, dude? Because that didn't sell even when it was an ongoing. Yeah, you could get it all collected, and it might be a better story collected, because there's sometimes stories are not as good as for a monthly title, but they might be better all collected. I don't think anyone's interested in that when it was an ongoing versus if it's a collected story,
I also think you're absolutely right. And I think where Marvel and DC also for that accessibility is why Marvel or DC isn't copying the Shonen Jump app. I have no idea.
They do. $1.99. You have the Marvel Unlimited app. Do you have that?
It's like $8 a month.
That's the problem. Marvel Unlimited
down to $1.99.
Yeah. If they drop that, because the Shonen Jump app is what, $2, $3 a month, I think.
It's $2 a month. I have both the Viz Media and the Shonen Jump.
Yeah, Marvel, if they want more people, because in all their, how they have those MCU premiere like red carpet, they always promote ads for Marvel Limited. $8.99. You gotta drop that down. If you drop it to $5, you'll get more people. Or if you do a special, $2.99 for 3 months, and then upcharge to $5.
I would drop it down to $1.99. It's material you don't have to pay for, and what the goal is to get that 10 to 15-year-old so it hooked on the comics. They love the story, and then constantly in every digital comic they read, there's an ad in. Check out your local comic book shop. Check out, constantly pushing. And so then when that kid gets that driver's license, or the parents, gets that extra money, the parents, say, where do you want to spend it? They say, let's go down to, Big Bob's Comics in the next town over, or whatever along those lines. And they need to be pushing. Like, why they didn't say, take your movie stuff for Spider-Man into your local comic shop and get a Spider-Man comic for free, like a free comic day, or take your movie stub in and get $2 off any Marvel comic book you want. That's one of the arguments where I think Marvel just Disney doesn't care. They're like, either you're going to make it comics or not. We have the IPs and we're making movies, and that's all we really care about. They're not connecting everything, and it's a shame too, because we're going to lose an entire generation of potential comic book fans, because the kid that reads it from 10 to 16 to 18 is the one that finally gets into a comic book shop, and then when they do, they discover this whole other world of indies, of the other than the big two. They learn what collecting is. They're like, oh shit, why is that $100? Oh, it's because it was the first appearance of this character, and if you buy it and you have it in this shape, you've got to train them when they're young. And if it takes Marvel and DC doing the digital route, then that's something that they might have to think. If the store route's not viable, they need to make that digital route much
Todd
more
McFarlane,
entertaining.
he's tried it with the Page Puncher thing, but the Page Puncher thing, he's not did it as much as he did before. Because with Page Punchers, it was essentially comic book, free toy in the thing, $10, right? Not bad. Yeah. But at a certain point, even those didn't last because, first of all, he can't save the industry by himself. I love Todd McFarlane. I love what he does. He's awesome. But you got to factor in, that's a $10 investment for a $5 floppy and a small toy. If you're buying for your kid, the money doesn't really matter if you're investing into them. But those are kept in the toy section where you would go and buy like the toys, like the DC, Marvel, Transformers, Star Wars toys. Those have to be in the front of the store. I promise you, people, if it's on a rack in the magazine, everyone looks at the racks in the magazine. No one buys them anymore. But if you see a Batman comic right there for your kid, you're like, hey, you can take it. He's doing different ones like the Transformers and G.I. Joe now, which obviously those are getting a little bit more traction now. But the Page Puncher thing is a good idea, but I don't think it's gonna matter in the grand scheme of things. There's just nothing you can do unless you make it like you said. You have to put them in big box stores. It has to be, and they have to be accessible in a part of the store where everyone goes, which is the checkout stands, where I always say, and they are reasonably priced to pick up, And what you said before about spinner racks, your spinner rack is technically your phone, Shonen Jump app, go here, read a whole bunch of new stuff. Subscribe for what? $3 a month, $2 a month, Yeah. If Marvel wants to get those numbers, they got to drop it down. $8 is going to be a little stiff there for some people. $3.
All of these methods won't help us out as indies. Like, we can't. We don't have the ability to access the people like Marvel does, and also we don't have the ability to financially practically give away all of this old content in order to get readers hooked in. But especially with the amount of people they're getting to. But if the comics overall to save them, that's what the big two have to do. We can't expect even guys as popular as Eric July. How many of those is he creating new readers, or is he just selling to his fans? And that's not a knock against him. It's not his responsibility. But at the same time, though, it's like if we're talking about saving the industry, even the most successful in the industry
indies
aren't bringing more people in.
So, or even if you look at the best sellers, they're always just keeping. It's like a Titanic before it sinks. It's always before the water comes in. There's always that breach beforehand for that wall. Like Daniel Warren Johnson is doing very well in Transformers. I've read the first volume for it. It is absolutely amazing. And Skybound is doing great. They really are.
I love that new series too.
It's good. It's really good. But they themselves can't keep things afloat for that long. It's just not like you can't just I don't know why the industry does that. They just rely on like very select few titles to carry things. And they've been mostly the reason why a lot of these guys got cut down. They got burnt out. Like think of a guy like Joshua Williamson. He was literally on almost everything from Marvel to DC to Image to IDW. Jason Aaron the same way. Scott Snyder, or even Michael J. Michael Straczynski. He's been on a lot of stuff. Kyle Higgins been on a lot of stuff. A lot of these, or Chip Zdarsky, he's been on a lot of stuff. Guys, or Jonathan Hickman too. There's been so many people. You put them on like 6 titles a month, they're going to get burned out. There's no way your creative mind can spread out between 6 titles if you're doing it between Marvel, DC, Image, Boom, and all those other places. It's just not possible. So the people that were big, well, they're starting to get less work because they're getting burnt out. Like Jonathan Hickman, there's this new Wolverine miniseries he got a chance to do. The reviews for it, I haven't read the book yet, but the reviews have been not so good. Gee, I imagine why they're not good. He has to do Ultimate Spider-Man. He's doing the God series. I don't know if they canceled that so far. He's doing a Wolverine title. He's doing Alien versus Avengers. Like, how many titles can someone be on before their brain just completely shits the bed and be like, I don't have any more ideas here. I'm just done. But they have to do that because if they only write one title, they can't make enough money. And you already don't get paid a lot for page rate anyway. Isn't it like $60 to $80 a page anyway?
So that's like, it's something ridiculous.
So 80 times, what is it? 24 would be like how much? Like 1,600, I think.
Something like that. I mean, it's not enough to live off of, especially with the time.
And the only way you can do it is if you do how many? 3, 4 books, actually. Yeah. That's the only way you could even somewhat survive unless you do more than one. So the other thing you mentioned with Indy on your in a tweet that you mentioned for like you did a Donzo manifesto, as I call them. Or where instead of releasing a floppy, you're going to end up just doing it more like what Air July does, more like in a graphic novel format where you can consume an entire story arc basically all at once, you know?
Yeah, and being able, like, in my situation, since I write and draw, and since I'm handling the art duties, which most of the money you spend on a comic is going to go through your art duties.
True, yeah.
And also with the way the economy is, for me, sitting down and banging out, 84 to 86 pages, which is essentially be 4 issues, and getting that arc in one shot. And then for me, trying to sell that is much easier than convincing someone to buy a $7-page or $7 24-page book. Like, even at my best, the price, like, I have a 44-page book for Sig and Joe issue 1. The best price I can offer to you if you're standing in front of me is $5. That's making at least, a book cost me $2.50 to make. $5 gives me at least what I put into it, plus, doubles my money.
Right.
To mail it, the best I can do is $15. Now, if I wanted to break even and make no money, I could do $10, but then that's me only shipping to America and along those lines. Now, if I do a graphic novel, a perfect bound graphic novel, and it costs me $5 to $6 per, but I can sell it for 10 to 15. That's a much easier sell. Comic book shops, if you're going directly to them, they like that because if you're going to sell it to a comic shop, they want to buy it from you at half of the retail value. So then that way they can make their money back. And if you're trying to sell on a table, it's like, here's my 24-page, $15 book, or here's my 180 or my 86-page graphic novel for $10. Now, it's people who pay for the art, they can't do that because you're talking about, if you're paying, let's say, $200 a page for pencils, inks, and lettering and coloring, and then you're trying to fork out 84 pages, 86 pages worth of art, your Kickstarter is going to have to be at like $10,000-$12,000. It can cost $4,000 to $7,000 just to do a 24-page book. Now, if I need to do 4 of those at one time, well, now I'm spending $18,000 or $16,000 in order to get a novel done that on an unproven property that I got to convince people to buy. So it doesn't help them out, but with my versatility of writing and drawing, and this is anyone who can draw and write their own books and do most of their own work, then it's just more fiscal business to get all of that done at one time. If I give it to an AP, like an Antarctic Press or another small publisher,
they got to get their cut. Yeah,
they can take that graphic novel, break it up into 4 floppies, and then distribute them to comic shops. Do it that way. I'm not going to pay Comics Wellspring and print out floppies anymore. I am going to do it with issue 2 of Sig and Joe because I was planning to do a Kickstarter, but the book is pretty much done. So I am going to get that printed and I will sell that. But essentially from here on, I'm going to reboot the whole series and it's going to be done in a graphic novel pace.
Yeah, I was going to I don't know if you're going to do this. I don't know if you thought about it. What you could do is just do issue 3 instead of rebooting and then just combine all of that into one graphic novel instead of just rebooting, honestly. Yeah,
well, I'm also wanting to rewrite the first 2 issues.
You didn't think you did a good job on them?
I don't think it. Well, the thing is, I can do better, and I think it would do more justice to the story. I've learned a lot since I first started making Sig and Joe. Now I've released another book called The Squirrels Saved Longview. I've been in a couple anthologies, and my writing has gotten better. I'm working on a 31-page story for Antarctic Press for the Ninja High School anthology that's coming up for issue 200. It might be in that, or Ben Dunn has talked about putting it out as its own book. And I feel like I love the characters, and I just, for a personal and also for my artistic side, redoing that and kind of, it's like you made that indie movie, the studios like it. Well, now we're going to make the full big budget one. Now I'm going to change some things and It's stuff that I
So
learned through the process.
so these first two issues are just going to be kind of like in your continuity for this, like an Elseworld thing, but the
Yeah,
reboot will be the main thing technically.
yeah,
So yeah,
it's like, hey, check
or
out
hey,
my first
one
two.
day you could have them cross over technically.
Oh
You have
yeah, I mean,
the
and
new
I can
guys
add
meet the
them at
old
the
guys.
end.
Imagine just two cigarettes talking to each other, being like, "Hey, you seem kind of hot." That would be kind of funny. That'd be pretty funny. Okay.
So yeah, there's stuff I can play around with it, and it's also a lot of personal too. It's like I know I can do
Mhm.
better, and I would like to put a better foot forward. And I think that the series has something. It's just
There's potential there. Yeah.
yeah, it's the reboot will help out quite a bit, and also too, I'm I'm not nearly as much about the money as I am learning how to do this. I'm still in that
Mhm.
area where I learn by creating, and then as I create, I through my mistakes and stuff along those lines, I get I learn like my college class kind of deal. So for me, just the reboot will be allow me to learn new things, try new things, and will help me just become a better creator overall. Plus, two at my speed, I can do an arc of Sig and Joe, and then allow me to do a one shot, like an 80-page one shot of other stories. I've got 4 or 5 brewing around in my head in different
Mhm.
stages of development.
Right.
So this allows me, because right now it's like I get one issue done, and then I got to prepare a Kickstarter campaign that I really don't need. And then I got to try to push that one
Yeah.
issue while I'm also trying to get the second issue done. And then there turns out to be a year between them. I would much rather get the 4 issues done in one shot and then start just showing them to people that way. So then that way there's not
Mhm.
that whole episode 1 comes out in March and episode 2 will come out in November,
Yeah, and with indie, it would be like first episode comes out in March, and then you're waiting until March of the following year for the
Yeah.
next one. Yeah, maybe if that, because delays and shipping delays, and someone might lose their product too. I think that's the model that most indies should do, honestly, unless that story is so fucking good you're willing to wait, which is not the case for most of them. I would
Yeah.
just just do the first 2 issues all at once, make it a more completer of an arc, and then just sell it that way. Because, if you're an indie, you already don't have the luxury of consistency just based off the circumstances around you. So it's much better and fulfilling if you just put something all together at once, sell it that way, and then kind of do that more. Because, people just lose interest if that same series doesn't get updated for a while. I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
just how people are.
And I want to create, I call them super fans. Essentially, I think in indies, and the reason why Eric July is successful, the reason why EVS is successful, Jason Brubaker, Doug TenNapel,
Mhm.
is because they have fans who will buy anything they do. And to
Mhm.
create that, you have to have material to show them. If I give someone a full
Yeah.
4-issue arc of Sig and Joe and a graphic novel for like 10 or 12 bucks, and they read through that and they're like, that was awesome. I love this.
Yeah.
Well, here's volume 2, or here's a Kickstarter for something else I'm working on.
Mhm.
And if you like that, you're going to love this. It's creating that super fan who wants to buy your stuff and having that library in order to hook them in. Just showing them one issue a year, and there's so much other stuff and media around, it's going to be really hard to acquire those super fans.
Yeah. And
That's why a
then
lot of these guys do the shows and stuff.
Mhm.
And whether you agree with the drama stuff or not, they're creating fans that
Mhm.
want to support them monetarily with anything they do. T-shirts, stickers, they're super
Yeah.
fans. That's what your indies should be trying to create.
Oh, because I wanted to ask you, for anyone that might just only have seen you from this appearance and not the other one, is there a way to purchase like Sig and Joe on like your own personal website, or do you have a personal website for people to go and buy the book right now?
Not right now. You essentially just look up Lunchbox Warren, Facebook, whatever your poison is for social
Mhm.
media, Facebook, Instagram. Get a
Yeah.
hold of me through there, and then I can send you your copy. Right now, if I was going to if you like a copy, it's $15 in the US, and that's with shipping included. So for $15, I can get you a copy, Gemini, or with a in a Gemini packaged up. I'll throw some stickers in there, and I also have a coloring book available and some other things. But that's another thing is I got to get a website or some face so that I can have more of a presence and have a place where people can go to buy stuff. And I'm still behind on that because monetization, I don't necessarily like marketing. I don't like the push. I don't like how what the mark. Yeah, I don't like it that much. But I'm trying to push myself into it. It's just it's a big challenge, and I'm learning. But a website in the future is definitely the route I want to go. But if not,
because that's usually the problem with indie. Sometimes is like even if someone wanted to read initially up front, if someone doesn't have that book available, then not only does someone generally just lose interest altogether right then and there, they might not even come back because they're like, well, I tried to get it at that moment in time, but he didn't have it,
Yeah, and that's a big that's all part of that access part too, And it's one of the reasons why indies are, we can't really be held responsible for saving comics when we don't have the power or the reach in order to do it. That's up to the big two. And then indies just need to find a place in your own world. The beauty about indies is direct market, and you can survive off of and thrive off of 1,000 super fans that are willing to spend that, that $55 to get the book and the variant cover and the sticker and the poster, who go to your website and buy original art, stuff along those lines, and we can survive off 1,000 people. Marvel and DC should be like, we need to try to get as many people as possible. We need to get the kids saying, hey, Mom, I really want that. And the mom looks up and sees for $2.50 what the kid wants. It's like, well, okay, I can afford that. And then just grab it, hand it to Junior. Now Junior's reading Spider-Man. That's kind of whether it's, I think we get hung up on Spinnerex. It just needs to be access. There is a problem with that access. Now, if it is digital, then Marvel and DC can do that. Digital can be harmful to indie in some aspects when you're talking about trying to make money. It's good for exposure to be seen, but there is a problem because it's usually a lower price point, or you're on a website that's a subscription like Global Comics, and they're able to read the whole thing if you have that set up there. So you're either giving it to them on a level for free, or they're paying very little for it. And if you are paying $4,000 to $7,000 to make one issue, when you have 300 backers and what used to be 10 digital backers is now 150, you've lost out on a massive overhead profit on those books. So you're talking about a Kickstarter that was doing $18,000, $20,000 is now doing 12 or 13. And then, when you go really big into especially with the collector face or the Kickstarter side, you need to get names. You need to get that artist who costs $1,000 to get a cover, because that artist has 10,000 fans, and you're hoping 100 of them will buy your book because they buy everything this artist does.
Yeah, it's like the same thing with like people that have a lot of like followers on social media. People assume that if you can just grab like maybe 100 of those people, that's good enough. That's the crazy part too, is like just the art alone itself would make people like not want to do it. Because I know there was a post I saw like on Facebook or whatever, where a guy was like, what's stopping you from making your indie comic? And it's like, I mean, literally money would probably be the most average answer for people. Just the art alone would probably cost you like maybe $3,000. That's lowballing it too. You'd probably have to get somebody to do a page for like $30 an hour. Not like an hour, but sorry, $30 a page. You'd probably have to be contracting someone that's in Philippines, Brazil, because obviously their currency is lower than ours, so they could translate better for you to get more bang for your buck. So not only do you have to potentially contact an artist that's not even in this country, they can't understand you initially up front. So communication barrier, trying to get them to understand what you want out of your shit. It's a crazy world we live in trying to get this stuff done. I did not know that there was this much they need to make a comic when I first initially, loved comics. I thought he just kind of do the art and make me his print. Yeah, that's just how that works.
And it's not all roses on my end, because I can make a comic book and I just have to pay a letterer. I have to be good enough in a sea of people selling comic books in order to get people to recognize my book and feel it's worth paying the money for. And it's one of the things that I have to work on becoming a better artist. I have to push myself, a better writer. One of the reasons why I was going to reboot Sig and Joe is because I need to step my game up and make my own art to the point where people walk by and it makes someone pause. If you're buying art, you can find that Filipino artist who could work for Marvel, and you're getting him for $30 a page because of where he lives. I mean, there is some excellent foreign talent, and
really good.
I don't hold anything against those guys for charging what they do, because if I could charge $30 a page and live off that, I would, because that means I'm making comics. But I can't do that because I live in America. So if you're buying talent, you have the ability to raise the level of quality by just purely based off of how much you're able to afford. If you have a decent, full-time job, well, then you're buying an artist who's charging $80 to $100 a page, and they're doing stuff that makes Marvel jealous. Or, with me, quality is all on me. It's all on how well I can draw. So I have to get constantly better, because if my artwork's not good enough, then it's like, I don't care how much I market it. No, if no one wants to buy it, if my writing's not good, if the book's not fun. So
I think marketing gets a little overrated in the space a lot too, because everyone, that's the thing I don't ever really knock indies for, because there is a lot of people that do marketing very well. But the problem that generally goes along with that is everyone's kind of just competing for the same audience,
Yeah.
There has to be a way to market yourself to a different audience, so to speak, but there isn't really different audiences, because indie comics is already a niche of the other popular comics to begin with. So kind of in this like weird bubble where it's just this ladder system and everyone's just on a human centipede.
Yeah. Well, and you look at the most successful indie guys right now. Eric July is not marketing ISOM. He spent years marketing himself on his YouTube channel and building an audience. EVS is not blowing everyone's mind with Cyberfrog. It's EVS builds up an audience based upon all of his stuff. And I'm not going to get into the weeds of the drama stuff, but it's like, if you look at it, these guys are not building these massive audiences just based upon purely quality of writing and art. They're doing it other ways. They, you almost like, in order to get someone to read a book, you've got to be juggling plates and chainsaws and stuff, and doing stuff away from comics in order to. So then, with me, if I draw 8 hours a day, trying to get a page a day done, just hardcore going into it, I don't want to spend 4 hours editing together review videos of my favorite manga or along those lines. God bless the creators that can do that, but I myself, it's just like, there's only so much I can do. You feel stretched thin, and that's the thing with marketing that irritates me too. Is it's like, I wish the books would just sell themselves, but that's naive to think that would happen.
Yeah. Even in a traditional publishing, that isn't a thing either, because people think, well, even if you don't do a comic and you do a traditional written novel, well, that itself has its own fair share of problems, because not only are you competing with people that want to do it on the cheaper level without the comics added to it, right?
Yeah.
But it's that idea that like people just don't function in their brains anymore. It doesn't click. Just because you have an idea doesn't mean someone else haven't had that idea. They just haven't executed upon it, just like you. And then when there's a point where you do both execute on it, now you're going to compete against people that are already doing it before you. That's the problem. So even if you just go from a cheaper route of just doing it in novel form, you're still competing in the same way. Maybe even worse, honestly, because why are your words better than that guy's words?
Oh yeah,
that's at least with pictures, just with art of comics, you can convince someone, hey, my art's probably a little better than that guy's, because you can visually see it.
And on top of that, we're trying to convince them, hey, my comic's better than that Marvel one. But then they're like, okay, why is yours $15? Like, what am I paying $15 for? Then you got to try to get into the weeds of how much it costs to make the darn things. And you're talking about a disposable income or a disposable product of entertainment. And For collectors, it makes sense. I'm paying $20 because I'm getting this Randy Green cover, and that cover will do nothing but raise in value because of the rarity of that artwork. Now, I can't convince a parent to go to Kickstarter to donate for a book for their kid to read when they can just go to the kids section at a Fred Meyer or a Safeway and pick up a coloring book or stuff along those lines, or just give their kid a tablet and that kid now can read all the manga they want for $1.99 a month that the parent doesn't even notice being gone. We have a lot of stuff stacked against us when it comes to trying to sell these things, and I'm going to try to create bang for your buck. I want to create the quality story, but I'm going to try to package it in a way where I can get it to you for the least amount of possible for what you're getting. If I doubt I'm going to be able to do a DC Direct a compact price or a manga price, but I am going to be able to offer at least for $15 you're going to get 4 issues worth of content.
Yeah, because if you do it on Kickstarter or Indiegogo, the base shipping price to ship and to pay for shipping is $10. Because I feel like it's a little. I'm not saying it's entirely disingenuous when people do this. People say their book on Indiegogo is like $20. That's a lie because the shipping itself makes it $30. The books are $30 really. I just wish people would stop saying it's $20. It's not true. You're not even paying $20. That's just a lie. I don't know how people do it. It's just like, can you just say what the real price is? And people are going to buy it anyways. I don't know why people are trying to say it's $10 less than it is. The tipping is optional, which I don't know if a lot of people tip on you on those websites, but it's $10. It's $10 base to ship these books if you're in the United States, Yeah. So an indie comic you're trying to push on someone that's $20 is really $30,
Plus, if you're going to go to Kickstarter, Indiegogo, there is a meta in those things. So if your book doesn't fit that meta, then you've got another thing stacked against you, because there's a certain kind of customer looking for a certain kind of book, and that majority of them are going on there for that. Then it's like, okay, well, does my coffee cup and cigarette fighting robots fit in a world where the metas are sexy covers or sometimes outright porn parodies and stuff along those lines, really adult books where if you put the boobs in the right place, you're going to attract more people. It's like you can't open up a sushi stand in a food court full of burger shops because people are going there for burgers. So there's other factors you got to put in there too. And if you're going to want to do this and you have to pay for all of it out of pocket, you better really want to do this, because this is not something that you can just get into like a weekend hobby. Yeah. You're going to be spending at the minimum $4,000 to do a decent book. And I'm not even talking about top of line quality, but that's a decent book with no variants. It's a 4,000. So,
and a good reason why a lot of people even back a project most of the time is either because the art would look good, especially not even just with interior covers or interior pages. People say the actual cover of the book, like the first page you see. That's why people usually spend the decent amount of the money they make on the variant covers, because those is what's going to draw someone into even back.
Yeah.
Like recently with like John Malin. Not even him as a person. People have reviewed the first book and they haven't said it's that good. But why did a lot of people buy it initially up front? Why did they even back it? They said the art looked good. Just the art. Because people are saying the reason why you sell the art as an indie person instead of the writing is, well, no one knows anything about your book because it's on a Kickstarter and I don't know the story. The only thing you can sell me is yourself and the art. If the art isn't good and you kind of maybe cut corners on it with your artist, that might be the determining factor of like if you get like 10 more backers or less than that. Honestly,
the art gets them to open it. The writing helps them reading the next one.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy, man? A lot of indie people don't understand this. They always say these things like the mainstream does, and the way the mainstream gets confused, or people that use opinions of the mainstream do. If you have a number 1, it will always sell better than a number 2. I don't know why. Even in indie, people go, "Why did my number 2 campaign do as well?"
Yeah,
you want to crack? Are you retarded? and that goes what you said about the writing just a moment ago. If number 1 made them buy, because number 1s make anyone buy. It's just what they just have that effect,
Yeah, it's always that number 1 is a key issue,
And if they didn't back for number 2, it's probably because they might have read it, probably didn't like it, and don't see the worthwhile investment to back issues 2, 3, and 4. So that first book, like you said before, you said it, I think on the last appearance too, first impressions matter. That first book has to be very good. It just has to be.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't get the consistency of backers later on, you know?
Yeah, you know, you can keep some people coming back if you can up that collector value, spend that $2,000 on that guy who used to work for Marvel and have him draw your cover. But when you're talking about bringing those readers back and getting those numbers to go up, you have to have something worthwhile inside it, or they're not going to come back. Because especially in today's economy, the way we're hurting and everything's getting more and more expensive, you might only be able to afford 2 books off of Kickstarter because you're already paying like $30 or more per book. So, you know, hey, yeah, that had a cool cover, but the inside art was okay and the story was just whatever. So I don't want to read it anymore. I'd rather go and spend my money on this book because, you know, I only have so much to spend. And yeah, it's a really contracting business right now, and it's I think there's going to be a lot of people who end up not being able to just do it anymore if it just keeps on this path. I don't think
that's actually a good thing technically for you, or someone like you who can do more than one job, because people have to pay like the separate jobs. I think there is that thing in, I think it's in the job market. It's called the law of averages, where the people that you kind of weed out the people that aren't going to be there long term, and you just left with the people that you have. Eventually, you know, push comes to shove, maybe in about, this is like a hot thing when it's building up, is this new indie craze with a lot of people coming in right now. Maybe like 5 years, we'll see who's really here still, who's still pushing like number 6 of their original campaign that started at number 1, you know, or who's still maybe probably trying to change a different way to do the format. Or like yourself, you're going to be like, you know what, I'm just doing maybe like a 60-page book at this point now. No more floppies. I'm saying also floppies, you're not even technically even getting the 24 pages because there's ads. Now with indies, that's different because there's no ads. There's nothing to advertise, essentially. But that's the thing is, I think the format needs to change. If people really want to compete with Marvel and DC, I think that notion just needs to be thrown out. I'm just tired of hearing it. You can't. You literally cannot. It's virtually impossible. What you can do is you can be the best indie. That's what you can do. That's achievable. You know, you can be the best underrated guy, which is good.
And if
that's what Image does. That's all. Image has always kind of been that. Even though, their stories were pretty shit. If you go and actually watch documentaries based on their comics, the stories were never there. It was just art that kept people, you know. And you also have, like you said, creative personalities that people like Tom McFarlane, Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee, all those people. You know,
what it was back in the era of the comic Rockstar, which has been dead since Image because Marvel and DC don't want to create rock stars anymore. They want to try to keep that
cycle the same people for every title. Like, you know how many titles Mark Waid has done, guys? I know people don't like Mark Waid, and I don't either. He's actually just a borderline retard. He writes on a lot of stuff. This is what they do. Either they hire the most random buttfuck nobody, or they recycle the same person that was arguably not A tier. They were probably maybe B to C tier, and they recycle that person on 3-4 different titles constantly. You know?
Yeah.
Now Joshua Williamson went, you know what? I can't do all these titles. I'm just going to go to DC and just do all in, and we'll see how this turns out. Imagine writing 5 different books between 3 different companies. That's crazy. That man is insane. He did Cobra Commander. He did Green Arrow. He did Batman and Robin. He did he did like I think a few more that I can't remember right now. He was doing a lot of shit. They're burning that guy out. Imagine doing all that for $80 a page.
That's nuts. Like Bendis, I remember when Bendis was writing damn near everything Marvel. It's easier to tell you what he wasn't writing.
He was like Superman. He was doing DC at one point when he left Marvel and was doing a bunch of titles there. It's like that's the problem with them is they need the mainstream. They want to get people to reading books. The problem is they don't really have any DC specifically is DC outside of compact comics. I know you've seen the lists that have come up, dude. They don't even have a comic book in the top 10. And if you ICV2. Apparently, Batman issue 154, which is an absolute power tie because it's tying into the DC All In. Yeah, that's on a top 10. But if you go on any other ones, anybody else's list, that's not there. DC arguably has no books in the top 10. That's bad. That's really bad. What is DC doing at this point? Are they just fucking around?
I really do.
What does Jim Lee do, man? Is Jim Lee just sitting on his desk, just I don't know, jerking off because he's not doing anything? I don't know what that guy does.
They need to separate the characters more. I think Marvel and DC should cut some titles, and then start reining in, so that, and also long-term teams. Like I want a writer artist that are going to be there for 2 years and have, or 5 years, and have multiple arcs, so I can have that dependability that I don't all of a sudden a new team jumps in and they rewrite the history or just ignore everything that just was happening in the last other episodes issues. And I also don't want to have to get a checklist and spend, buy 30 books just to understand what's going on in my favorite title. And that's a lot of stuff. They need to stop doing that. They need
with pullage too. Like there are people that do. I'm pretty sure you've seen like comic book YouTube videos where people do like the new comic book day videos and all the titles coming out. Yeah. Most people, unless you're like Comic Book Corner 2.0 with Josh, he has where you can buy a bunch of books. He probably got money like that.
Oh yeah.
Other people, they do a like budget pull list, $50 budget list, guys. That means you're probably getting like what? 5-6 titles right there. 6 titles, $50 is books. People understand books aren't $3.99 like it used to be. Books are like $4.99 to anywhere between $6.99, give or take which character. And then midway through stories, I've never liked this, honestly. I might be a hot take. I've never cared for like the thing called annuals. I feel like they're just like unneeded for the most part. Like you're already following a character. Like I'll use a recent example with Thanos. So they have Thanos come back in Return of the Mad Titan. Then for his big event for Marvel, they spread his big event in each character, like you said, tie-in. So each character, he has a tie-in annual in their ongoing series already. Like, oh my God. Why didn't you just make a book at once? Why are those annuals spread up between like Wolverine, Thor, Spider-Man, Doctor? Just make that in one book. What are you doing? It's a waste. Like if you're reading Wolverine and you're like, oh yeah, newest Wolverine book right here. Wolverine annual number 1. Wait, this is on like issue 12? Where the I hate the annual thing. I like the story sometimes, but it's just so unnecessary because annuals are like, well, if you don't read this, it won't matter. But if you get this, it's kind of like a mean time if we get to the next thing. It's like, I'll just wait for the next thing then,
Yeah, I always like, the only annuals I ever really liked were the ones that were separated from the main series and delved into a backstory or, built up like a good annual story is Bruce and Alfred doing something, or maybe Alfred and Bruce interacting when Bruce was still a kid, and his parents just passed, like that kind of stuff that straight lengthens the story or puts the world out there. But no, they need to streamline a lot of stuff, and they need to get away from these like every 6 months major collected big stories that affect everyone. We should go a year where Spider-Man just does Spider-Man stuff, and maybe the Human Torch will show up or Daredevil will show up, but we're not doing this whole thing where it's like the Blood Wars and now you have to go buy Punisher Blood Wars to understand what happens after Spider-Man Blood Wars, and then you go get Thor Blood Wars. No, I just want a good Thor story or a good Captain America story. Let's focus more on that and make it more accessible, and also just make a long-term team gives us some stability. Let's let 2 talented people create something and let it keep going. Instead, it's like, oh well, they'll be on for 5 issues, and now the new artist and guy come on, and maybe I don't like this new artist, or the new writers like retcon and everything, and
that's gonna happen for Transformers coming up after a certain amount of issues. I think Daniel Warren Johnson's not gonna be there. Like, that's a massive red flag. If that person is not as good as him, that title is falling off the face of the earth. It's going to fall off a cliff. It will for sure. He set the bar, and if that person can't even get like right there to that bar, it's over. Yeah.
Now they might take over and raise it even more.
That's very possible. That would be crazy if someone did that. But then again, in this landscape, I doubt that's going to happen. They're most likely going to be worse than what he could put out. But then again, there's always a hope that they could do better. But it's like if they put like Gail Simone on it, I'm like, all right, okay, what are we doing here? Gail Simone writing Transformers, I'll burn those titles to the ground.
It's one thing I loved about Invincible, and I call Invincible the most manga Western comic ever created.
Oh yeah, I love Invincible, man. It's such a great story, man.
And that was 2 artists, Otley and I forgot the name of the other guy.
Robert Kirkman.
Yes. Well, then you had the one writer, and you got a beginning a middle and an end, and it was just beautiful. Now, Marvel and DC can't really do that stuff because they're trying to keep characters alive, and they have the challenge of trying to write for a character that has 100 years of backstory. But I really enjoy beginning, middle, and end. I like the consistency. I like the consistency in the writing, and it was nice. And if Marvel and DC could copy that in some aspect where it's like, we're going to put you two on here, you have a 3-year plan, you're doing Batman, and nothing that you do is going to affect Superman. Superman's going to go do his own thing. Wonder Woman's going to be handling her stuff. We're going to send Green Lantern into space. Aquaman's going to do underwater stuff, and each one stay to their own city and actually build up on those characters and those worlds instead of doing. And if you want to, every 2 years, do your big crossover event, but do that in its own series, like where I can go read the Infinity War, but its own issue, its own book.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about any of the other ones,
Yeah, because I was gonna because usually when I get paid, my hobby is buying comic books. So Venom 3 is coming out and it's gonna have Null, and I've never really read any Venom comics ever. So I was like, you know what? Maybe I'll just go and do the Donny Cates run. I know about the original issues with the Venom with Tom McFarlane and everything, but outside of that, I've never really delved that much into Venom. I've never even read Lethal Protector. So people say Donny Cates' run is very good. I was like, wait a minute, I'm gonna buy all these trades for Donny Cates' run. Then you have to get Absolute Carnage. Then you got to get King in Black. Why not just buy an omnibus that has all that? And I was like, there's a Venom bus that has all the first 35 issues of the Donny Cates run, Absolute Carnage, and King in Black. And you can just buy the other subsequent omnibuses. That's why the omnibuses sell as much as they do. You can get the entire thing right then and there without buying all that much trade. I like having trades. Obviously, they look really good on shows to have the whole thing completed. But I'll be honest with you guys, you can just get it in an omnibus format, pay like $70. Because you factor in, if you pay like $80 for that omnibus, with taxes like $90 if you're doing it off Amazon or eBay, you cover all those in trade. Now imagine if you bought all those single stories in trade. That is going to be around $80 anyway. Might as well get into one giant book and read it then. Well, there's no difference. There is actually just no difference at all. Manga does. Maybe indie should do this too. Maybe having like omnis in general, just save up enough art and story to just do a big giant book and then work on the next one.
Yeah.
But some people can't do that because, they don't have enough story to tell automatically. Manga omnibuses are even cheaper. Another reason why manga's stronger, manga's omnis, as you know, are the 3-in-1s. Those are like $20, $30 max. Even the manga's omnibuses are cheaper. That's crazy. Yeah. I love manga omnibuses. They are great.
I own all of the current hardbound Berserks. I
have the first one over there.
Yeah, I got all 14 of them. They're beautiful. Those are put out by Dark Horse. Those
look great. I bought another one of those. I bought it for Vinland Saga.
Oh yeah, Vinland Saga is doing the same thing, and they're re-releasing the series of nice
as well. Yeah, I like that format. Like that format is just so beautiful. They call them deluxe editions. Guys, these are omnibuses. To be honest, those are 1,000-page books over there. Like compendiums, or people can do compendiums too. Compendiums work fine. I just think for like also this last one before you head on a little bit here, the indie books you have read, what do you think they need to improve on beside like the art's usually the better part about them? Do you feel like any of the stories are anything worthwhile to keep people invested into that person in general?
I think the story will suffer in indies, but there's something about the consistency of indies which is great. Mm-hmm. You're not going to have to worry about massive changes between issues when it comes to writing, because you usually have that one writer, the person creating it. All of the old indie classics were all created by writer artists. Cerebus, the whole Image company were all writer artists there. But for storyline wise, I think with some indies, they don't study enough writing, study enough on what other people are doing, watching movies, reading screenplays, realizing that the writing is just as important as the art, and that they just kind of like, well, no, I know what's going on. I want to make my comic book, and I'm going to hire an artist who draws awesome, and this storyline we're just going to keep, but they don't try to get into like the beats of how to create it, the show and tell. I really do think that writing is kind of an underappreciated art form in indies. I know a lot of great writers. I know guys who create comic books where they do have beautiful art, but their writing is on point too. And you don't have to be a scholar; just write a good story, and from that keeps you entertained from point A to point B. Michael Bay makes a shit ton of movies, and his stories aren't anything to write home about.
Stories.
But it
What
can
are
be
those for Michael
entertaining.
Bay?
Yeah, it's still entertaining.
Story. That's overrated. Who needs that? I need explosions.
Explosions.
That's
But
it. That's all you need.
I think the writers. I think people need to understand that writing is very valuable to keep people coming in. The art will get you that first one, but with all the stuff that goes against indies, having a good story will keep you going longer than just having that pretty art and where they buy the first comic and it's like you got to make sure they have a reason to come back for the second one. And
yeah, because it doesn't have that number one appeal. The second one, it doesn't have that number one appeal. And if people didn't even read the book, because I do think some of the backers that get it don't believe in the person that they like to tell them a good story. That's the reason why they haven't read it.
Yeah.
People aren't going to admit that because that would be in itself drama brewing, right? But I do believe there's this thing in people where if like your friend does something, you have less hope in them to deliver a good story than someone that you don't know. It's a weird thing where like you go to a barber, you'll tell them things that you wouldn't even tell your wife kind of thing. It's that weird, like, I don't know you, so I can tell you shit that won't matter, right? So what is another thing you can identify for indies to improve on outside of like the writing and take more precedent with the writing than sometimes the art?
Well, it's hard. Like, there's always it's access, and a lot of people will argue that if you have it on digital and they get to read it for free, that they're not going to turn around and buy it, which we know it's not necessarily true. And reading it for free, they might not come back, but that's where the writing comes in. To create a super fan, a fan that's going to read the digital for free and then turn around and buy the graphic novel because they read all of your issues on Global Comics and they just love it. They might even get a t-shirt from your Teespring or something along those lines. If you want that kind of reader, you're going to have that writing in there and all around to keep them going. Good writing will take bad art and people will keep going with it because they're enjoying the story. So there is in indies, the kind of backer you're trying to get is either the collector backer or the reader backer. And if you want the collector, there's ways to do it. But if you want that reader, you want those 1,000 people or 100 people who just do everything that you do because your name is attached to it. You have to get them reading it. So sometimes if you're on issue 5, putting that issue 1 on Global Comics for free might get you help build that following and get you that super backer. And it's that quality of product that's going to keep them going more and more, because a super backer or a super fan reads issues 1 through 10 for free and then goes and buys the volumes because manga, I can read most of Shonen Jump's biggest hits for $2.99 a month or $1.99 a month and never have to touch them again. But yet the volumes are selling like hotcakes. These are kids who read this stuff digitally and it loved and captured them. Now you run into the aspect of I showed it to you for free, you didn't like it, and there was no point for you to keep going, and you're not going to buy it. But don't discredit getting access to your stuff so quickly that you cut off an entire potential future super fan base. Like, really look at is it because some of these big creators, like what was it? It's that I can't remember the name of the Webtoon series. And this goes to quality. Like, Webtoon is like winning the lottery. If you have good writing, good art, and good quality, you're creating an army of fans.
I know the story. I remember some of them tried to get a deal with some companies, but they couldn't because there was no way of tracking, like, if the person that was reading that webtoon weekly would be an active buyer, because if they're already getting it for free, what is the incentive to just buy it physically? You
gotta get that super fan that wants to do that wants everything of it. So if you're going to show it for free, then you get 10,000 people reading webtoon, then you transfer over to a crowdfunding and you bring 100 of those 10,000 or 200 over. Well, 200 people buying your book at $10 a piece, bam, or more like with Kickstarter, it's going to be about $15 to $20 a piece. And those kind of backers usually will spend more. They want the variant, they want the sticker, they want the poster. So if you're getting 200 people spending 50 to 100, $50 to $100 a piece, that's what you're giving it away for. So it's just like some gamer girl or some gamer chick said, it's like passing out free samples. They eat that cookie. If it's good enough, they're going to come back and buy them. Yeah. Now it could be a risk where they
most of the time you're just hungry and you just wanted a cookie.
So there is something out there. Like if you can afford to do it, that is definitely someone in my position.
Why don't people do 4-page previews anymore? In the Ripazine #1 that I had, he has that we could get the 4 previews of those. He isn't giving out the entire book, just a few. I counted the pages last time because I'm gonna do a review before I put up the Gooding review. He only put out a 4-page preview. Some people don't even have to do like a whole sample. Just do like a few pages.
Some indies can't do that because the next book is you can't make the next one until the first one sells enough. But writer artists like myself, I can do that because usually by the time 1 is able to be bought, 2 is already 3/4 of the way done. I can spend the time and write a 4-page real quick story and put that out there. I could technically write Sig and Joe shorts and just put that on Webtoons and Global Comics, just so that way, hey, these are funny, awesome little shorts. Where's the story? These shorts aren't even.
The thing is, where's the revenue come from? Because people got to factor in that when you're doing things on DC did a Webtoon book actually. Came out with this. They did a Webtoon book. I think there is something on their own app or website you can read it for free, but even they realized, wait a minute, why are we giving out all that material for free? We have to make money off of that. Even they understand that too. That's the problem with Webtoons and digital comics. Digital comics, because you do buy them, you get some revenue for them. Webtoons is a weird thing because you're basically just giving out stuff for free in the pure hope that someone is willing to buy a physical copy. If you do physical, because the thing, how does someone even make money from that? How do you make money? You might have 1 million people that read that. How do you make money? Because you yourself would go into a hole financially giving out shit for free, and I have all these views, but none of them are backers or buyers.
Well, now on Global Comics, you can sell them where, let's say you have the issue in there, and they'll get to read the first like 10 pages or the first 5 pages. You can set that up, and then that's what your hopes is. Those 5 pages get them to pay the $2.99 for that issue or $1.99 for that issue or whatever you're selling it at. But that's another problem though, is with digital, and it's what hurts indies, and a lot of these guys they don't acknowledge it, is that when you're trying to make money off this to pay for the $4,000 to $7,000 it costs to make it, someone spending $1.99 on Global Comics and whatever chunk of that you actually get after they take their spite out of it, that's not going to do you any good. You're going to have to sell, if it's $1.99, you're going to have to sell 4,000 or 2,000 copies just to pay for the next book to be made. So digital has its place, but it's all depends on what your overhead is, how much material that you have. Someone in my position, I could create, like if you Draw and Talk Tyler Carpenter, he does these 200, 300 page Megafist books. He's got all these other side ones. He can afford to put even the volume 1 of Megafist completely for free on Global Comics because he has
he has the backers, has the money revenue to leverage that. People understand it's all about leveraging what you can do versus what you can get out of it. Even that's because, to be fair, to be an indie, you have to be your own business in and of itself, even if it's on a much smaller scale. I feel like there needs to be something better in the marketing. Like you said, people doing the same marketing tactics each time. Why doesn't someone just do a music video?
Yeah,
Something. You gotta change it up. Do like maybe a skit, an acting thing. You know, people are kind of introverted in their personalities and stuff. But I feel like the reason why marketing gets stale in indie space is because everyone does the same thing. It's everything just literally just feels the same. Well, if everything feels the same and the market is kind of saturated with that, if one person at some point, dude, does one thing differently, that person's exploding.
Yeah.
No one's even tried it. That's the crazy part. No one's even done it after all this time. Ridiculous. I gotta see the same. Like, I don't mind comic book trailers, but I don't need to be convinced to buy a comic book from the trailer.
No.
I would have bought it if I wanted to buy it in general, you know?
And you're already a needle swimming in a sea of needles as it is.
So yeah.
Stepping out, that's one of the reasons why, sadly, drama marketing works so well, is because it allows you to step out from the pool. And it may be, not necessarily the most long-term healthier way to do it, but you get more eyes on you when you step up and you make that noise. So for indies, it's tough. It's tough out there because I can't tell a guy who's spending $7,000 a book just to get it made, hey, you give that first one away for free digitally, and you might get yourself 3 or 4 more backers. Well, that's not going to help them. That's not going to help them selling the book for $2. They've got to get these things pumped out, and they're trying to do it at some kind of level of a normal schedule. So that stuff doesn't work for them. So, you see this a lot with these fights in the community. It's like, yeah, your way may work for you, but just because someone else can't do it doesn't mean that, that your way is not the end way. It's you got to find. A
lot of people don't understand that. Like just because they're able to do something, that means that automatically maybe other people can. People don't have to understand. Everyone's financial constraints are different. Everyone's ways of potentially wanting success in their own way is different. But the other angle to that is like, when someone does do that, I'm not assuming that they talk about everybody. That's just like their general way of doing something.
Yeah. Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's it's another. Well, you mentioned about indies. What could help? Self-reflect. Don't ever be that indie creator who's like, my book is awesome, and it's a travesty that it's not selling.
The "what was me" thing. Oh yeah, I hate that. Oh, it's so cringe.
Is it how you package it? Do you need to improve the writing? Like when I look at sales numbers for my Kickstarter, or when I look at people reacting to stuff, I'm like, okay, well, what's making them react? When I look over and see someone who I think my art is comparable with, as in talent level, why are they getting more eyes? And instead of blaming that or horrors of society or algorithms, I was like, okay, what can I do to improve? So you really have to be honest with yourself as a creator. Where are your weaknesses? Where are your strengths? Can I improve on this? Why is it after 3 pages of people not reading it? Do I need to get a better interior artist? Do I need to work on my writing? Or
there's another one that I always throw in that wrench too. Maybe you are doing everything good. It's just competition. There's other competition out there. You're not the only one,
Yeah, you might make the best burger in the world, but if only 10 people know about it, and the person next to him happens to have 100 more people that know about him, it doesn't matter what your quality's at. So there are so many factors stacked up against you that it's why they say like comics will break you. It's because the world is really against you, and you're trying to sell something that in a market saturated with stuff at all different kinds of levels, and it's you really have to have that love to keep doing it, because if not, you're just going to be like, hey, I'm $10,000 in credit card debt and I am miserable right now and no one's reading my shit. That can happen quick.
Yeah, if someone went $10,000 in credit card debt for doing it, that would be horrible. That's bad.
Yeah, it happens quick though. You don't price out your Kickstarter correctly. Now all of a sudden you're $5,000 in the hole because you didn't have enough money to cover everything. There's guys, people that do their Kickstarters and then their car breaks down. They spend their Kickstarter money on fixing the transmission. Now you got to figure out how you're going to pay for a 24-page book to be made. It's
yeah. People always you know what, the Twilight writer, I forgot her name. People always rag on her for her being a best-selling author, even though that has its own weird connotation to it too.
Yeah,
New York Times bestseller. It just uses some fucking marketing bullshit.
Yeah,
she essentially made millions of dollars selling the idea of a love triangle. Keep in mind, I don't understand, the dumbest things usually work out. It's just, but that doesn't mean that you are worse than her or better. It doesn't mean anything. It's just the fact that, hey, there was a market for that and people just buy it. There's always this thing of human nature of like, YouTube content or video consecration would go along the lines of too. Make stuff people want to watch. Well, write stuff people want to read. And if that doesn't work, well, that is honestly just a competition thing. People assume just because they're doing this big thing that it means that they're the only person doing it and no one else is doing it. It's like, okay, that's just not how that works. There's a ton of people doing many creative endeavors, honestly. Or I know people don't like Andrew Tate. I know people don't. But I will say this as a quote, as something that he said in a reel that I was listening to when I was at the gym. Think about trying your best, right? When was the last time in your brain that you can really remember you tried your best? Like you gave it your all and you were mad at the result and you were just like, fuck, I'm going to go back and do it again.
Yeah.
Get like that. A lot of people that I've ran to and seen many, many times. I have a lot of these shows, honestly. Got right 600 episodes. Holy fucking shit. Wow. Even on Twitter for the most part, even on Facebook, when I go on those Facebook groups for indie creators too, it feels like some people aren't even trying their best. It feels like they're kind of just coasting and not trying your best as if like you're not giving any effort. It's like really trying, like really nailing in why it didn't work,
Yeah.
Like that feeling of like, damn, I failed. I really got to make this better. What was the last time in your brain you really tried, people?
Yeah. And that's the thing too, is there's also the other factors that you might have a product that looks like they're not trying, but because if they didn't know how to do it or didn't know the correct way to do it or they're learning, they felt like that, I've just ran 100 miles and I got someone telling me that, that I didn't do anything. And it's like, no, I didn't, it could kill you in your momentum. Because I remember when my first 56 pages of Sig and Joe, I put everything I could into it. The first review I got was devastating, where they're like, the words lazy gets brought up. And I'm just like, listen, I may be untalented. I may be naive. I may be a lot of things, but lazy is not one of them because I put in thousands of hours trying to do this shit. So it is one of those things where you got to realize that, and that's where that self-honesty comes in. That, you're putting in a lot of work, but are you putting in the right work?
True. You might be putting in the right work in the wrong places, know? Our gamer chick said, or you need to work on your marketing. A good writer can sell you a pile of shit, while a shitty writer can sell you a culinary experience. Oh, you're talking about waiters, but it goes in single too. The toxic love triangle. Yeah, that'd be me and my wife. Good Lord. And my pillow. No, I'm just kidding. Oh God, man. No, yeah, that's the thing is, what is a pile of shit to someone else? What is a pile of shit to you might be gold to someone else. That's crazy to think about, that Twilight can do that. That's a bad story. Is terrible, but that is gold to women.
I mean, we're watching right now that Megalopolis movie. Hasn't even come out yet, but it's like looking like a disaster. It might be one of the best written films ever, but it's not even going to do close to what Wolverine and Deadpool did, which I love that movie. But let's be serious, it didn't dive into any deep wells of writing. I mean, it was just entertainment, and it was great for what it is.
Other two, yeah.
And it was fun, and it entertained, and it did that. So it's like, just because you're writing the best stuff out there, or you're creating the best artist, or you're doing the best artwork yourself, doesn't mean it's going to catch on, and it doesn't. You can't stand there and wag your finger at the audience, the consumers, or the person who's doing better than you, because that's not going to get you anywhere. You need to work on yourself, work on why is it when they read 4 pages, they're not wanting to read the 5th one? Is that your delivery? Is that your pacing? Is that, there's stuff that you can work on to get better. And I think because of how much work this is, a lot of indie people get lost in the sea of everything they're trying to achieve, that they don't realize, that they don't stick back and say, okay, I need to do better and create a better product, or maybe not even a better product, a different one, because if my goal is to sell as many books as possible, then I need to sell. And that's another thing too, is if your goal is to sell as many book possibles, then you need to sell a book that hits as many of the audience as possible. You can't just say, I want my rare cowboy romance love title to sell as well as the superhero action story, when there's more people who want to see a superhero action story than there is.
And both of them just have different markets in general.
Yeah.
But not only do they have different markets in general, both have a peak in those markets too. Like,
yeah.
And then this thing with not just oversaturation, it's just that people have seen those kind of stories before. Like, what separates your generic way of doing this versus someone else's generic way? Because if they're both generic, then that's just, you toss a coin and you pick who's better, honestly.
Oh, yeah, yeah. So, yeah, there's so many factors to play in when you're doing this. And it's it gets to the point where, and it's another reason why probably marketing is not a strong feature in a lot of indie comic creators, is because when you're getting into marketing and someone's trying to explain it to you, the eyes start rolling back in your head and you just start, zoning out, because it's like focus groups and hitting the right attack audience and peaks. Like, how many people, if there's only 50 crime noir fans and there's 1,000 sexy comic fans, well, it's going to be much easier to get those 1,000. You only got 50, and if you hit even if you get all 50 of them, it won't even compare to the 1,000. So it's there's so much into this, and it can get so overwhelming. And I've gotten to the point where I don't ever consider quitting. I'm going to keep doing it, even if no one reads it. But I'm on that whole passion, obsession level with creating.
Comics. Yeah. That's the thing. I love comics so much, I would never quit reading them. Why the fuck would I do that? Because that's the thing. People say, "Well, I'm going to quit this hobby and go do what? This is all you're known for. This is all you're good for. You ain't good shit. What are you gonna do?"
It's the reason why indie comics will never
garden or something.
Away. Indie comics will never go away, because even if I'm the only one doing it, I'm still going to be making my comics, because I have the bug to create stories. So even if comics cons go from 30,000 people to 3,000 in one room of the conference hall, they're still going to be there. It's just, you're not going to be able to. What sadly is a lot of people who can't do all their own stuff are going to be weeded out with no fault of their own. It's just the financials and the market for indies is going to create to where some people just cannot afford to pay someone to write, not to write, but to draw, to letter, to print. They're just not going to be, the market won't be there for them to do it. And that's the sad thing, is that we're going to lose a lot of passionate, creative people just because of the finances. Guys like me will, even if I'm only printing out 25 books and only 50 people know about them, I can still keep doing it, because it's only about time and if my hand holds up.
And those people that do buy it are happy. The ones that get it, whether they're getting it for collecting purposes or reading it, you are making them happy in some way, Yeah.
You can only get so much out. Like, a market will only yield so much. I see other creators talk about unionizing, and we need to have the Filipino artists charging the same as an American artist to make it all fair. And it's like, no,
this is an open market.
Yeah,
the fans kind of decide that. Fans get to decide which projects they back. So
I can't expect some guy from Minnesota who works a full-time job and has a family to pay me $120 a page for pencils, because that's what I need to survive. I can't expect that. You can't just unionize and force everyone to pay that much, because what happens? No one's going to be able to pay it. No one's going to be able to afford to make a comic book. So then all these artists who can only work, only can find $50 a page work, well, you're not going to find any work then, because the average Joe writer who's paying for art is not going to be able to afford $100 a page. They can't afford to pay $2,400 just for pencils and inks, when the coloring is going to cost them another $100 a page, and then the inker or the letter is going to want $50 or dollars or more a page.
Yeah.
And it's like, you can't do that stuff to keep up with the economy. We don't have a service. If you want to make indie comics, you just, you're going to have to take a financial hit. You're not going to make money to survive off this. I know people who've been doing it for years. They're great writers. Mm-hmm. They have good artists. They have a good book. They have a good character. They know the game, and they still can't live off of it. And it's just the realities of the industry.
Because that's the reality of comics, even outside of indies. Like, there's certain mainstream comic writers and artists that can't do this for a living because it just doesn't pay enough. The people that even distribute, the people that basically make the pay structure knows it doesn't make enough money to profit. I'd imagine when they actually do the numbers, because I imagine when they do the numbers at the end of the year, I imagine most of the shit breaks even. Yeah. If that's being real generous there. It's probably on average as a loss leader for being
I've heard of pros with full-time jobs. Guys who are drawing books for Marvel and they still work full-time or part-time, to expect to be able to do that as an indie guy or indie creator.
You're going to be in like what, the top 1%? Maybe
of all indie creators.
Yeah.
Well, if you have that one miraculous series that's good enough where a bunch of people watch it, but you're talking about the 0.0001% of the industry. It's like.
Also, gotta understand you're doing this as a hobby, as more of a passion project. The notion that you can, I'm not saying you can't make money, but the notion that you're going to be able to make enough money to live off of it is that percentile is too small.
Yeah, I think that's as crazy of a notion as to you're going to save comics with indies.
Yeah,
if you're living off of indies, if that's your goal, then you're going to be running a whole different kind of operation than what. If you want to live off of it, we're talking about you're not going to be able to just do whatever you want. You're not going to be able to create whatever you want. And if you do happen to be able to be that one lucky person, it's because that lightning struck the bottle where your project resonated with someone, and talent just gets you onto the court. Luck and that it factor that you can't quantify, you can't plan for. That's a whole other thing. And in order to even get to the chance where luck might strike, where you get that cartoon or you get published, you have to work tons of hours and have talent out the yin yang to get to that point. It's all the work gets you to the show to where you might get lucky and get noticed, and strike that chord where you become that webtoon person who no one knew about. And after 1,000 chapters, they love your stuff so much that you're able to do a graphic novel, and then you do a Kickstarter or a crowdfund, and you make enough money where a publisher notices you, and then pretty soon a Netflix is doing a cartoon, which for the life of me, I cannot remember the name of it, but I saw her book at Target, and there's been talks of a cartoon being done of it. Well, yeah, that's great, but if that's your plan, I plan.
What happened with that lady that did the It Ends With Us, It Starts With Us book series? I think Colleen Hoover, the one who wrote that series, where she already sold a good amount of books. She was a New York Times bestseller bullshit. The most thing she made money off the book series from was that Justin Baldoni, the guy that directed it and starred in it, paid her millions of dollars for the rights to use her book as a movie. Yeah, that means there's no way she made enough money being a New York Times bestseller to live off of. There's just no way.
Yep. And all of these people doing 6-figure campaigns, pick any of the big indie top people, and none of them became famous from their work or from their books in the Kickstarter.
They're famous because you like them as a person. They invest yourself in the person. Yeah.
Doug TenNapel created Earthworm Jim. That's how he brought that fan base into Kickstarter. EBS brought his DC fan base into Kickstarter and then to Indiegogo. Eric July ran a commentary show on pop culture and he brought that fan base in. None of those guys created an indie comic, and it became so popular that's why they're at 6 figures. They're at 6 figures because they built an audience away from their books and brought that in. So you can't expect to be able to create a book and then you consider yourself a failure if it doesn't make the 6 figures or it doesn't blow up, because that is also, I mean, that's not how the game works. You can count on one hand how many creators have done that, and I can't think of any and right now off the top of my head, except for maybe the Common America guys, but they're not six-figure. Well, they might be six-figure, but they're
Common America. Oh, that's right, Iconic Comics. Yeah, Doug TenNapel. That's Doug TenNapel, right?
No, Common America is, I can't remember, the Tim Lim. And
yeah, There's a guy that does the Soul Finder series, and then there's Common America. I bought books for those. Those are, but that's the thing is they're also a one of a kind. They didn't go through any mainstream channels. They just kind of built it off like making a book. People, they knew that anime was popular. They did Common America as a girl with big titties, and they flop. That's it.
And they did, and Common America had a reliable release schedule. You know, it's like volume 1, 2 months later. Here's volume 2. You know, they have, or maybe not that quick, but they have a much better release schedule than most indies. So, you know, in order to get to those big levels and to have that audience, you've got to be producing stuff. And if producing the next thing is determine how well the first thing sells, that's a rough world to be in. You need to create these things without making any money to build up enough of a library where you get noticed. You know, that's one thing that Tyler's done is he has his, you know, with his YouTube and with his stuff that he's created, is he creates enough of a catalog, and even if it's not paying for the next one, it doesn't matter, he's making it. And it's the one thing that I need to work on myself, is that I need to instead of just making one floppy, I need to start producing these volumes and start producing where, sure, I can make floppies out of them. I can send it to a publisher and they can make floppies out of them. But what's important is that when they read that floppy and they look up my name on the internet, then they can find my website and they say, oh shit, I love Sig and Joe through Antarctic Press, but I just found on his website, he's got 4 volumes out. So I'm going to go snatch those up, you know, or and creates that fans like, oh shit, he's got a Kickstarter coming up for a whole new series. Oh, I want to read that. You know, that you have to have that library. It's like, what's the most important thing you can do in comics is just keep creating. The problem with that is if project A needs to pay for project B, which has to pay for C, it's hard to build up that library. And you need to, if you're not selling, you need to look at why you're not selling, be truthful about it, and then work on either re-gearing your project or working on a new project or how you package your project. And it's a lot, you know, you essentially have to do this because you love it. And then you hope that
the money
people
just kind of trickles in.
Like the money should be a pleasant surprise, not an end goal in some aspects. You know, everyone does it different and whatever motivates you. But for me personally, would I love to live off this? Yeah, but I realize how much that takes to get there. So I can't keep myself motivated to do this stuff, to spend all my free time, to not have a personal life, to dump all the money into this. And then where my only goal is to live off of it. I have to do this for much more love. I have to create stories that at the end of the day, I'm happy that I've spent the time to do it, that I feel proud of that. And I try to take the money, which is nice, but I don't expect it. I try not to expect it. I can do that because I create my own stuff, but I'm only as good as I am. So it's much different than a business type thought where it's like, okay, I'm going to go hire these people, create a book, and then I'm going to try to, you know, make it the next big thing. And, you know, that's almost like a different, it's hard to marry those two processes, love and creating for love and creating for business, you know.
Well, the last few things I'll ask you before you wrap up is, you got any plans coming up for 2024, going to 2025 you would like to let people know about?
Right now, I'm working on a 31-page story for the release of Ninja High School number 200. Ben Dunn's Ninja High School book has made it to that crazy indie level where he's got number 200 next to it. It's a very small group of people that get that far. And he's opening up the doors for his property for fans to do fan art, pinups, and short, anthology stories for submission. They've already got approval. They're going to make 200 as big as Ben wants to. So if he gets 1,000 pages worth of stuff, then he's going to print 1,000 pages worth of stuff. So there is. I'm working on my story for that. I'm doing the finishing touches. I'm doing a lot of stuff with speed lines, motion, action that I've never done before. And then after I get done with the artwork of that, I'm going to be going headfirst into the Sig and Joe reboot. And then moving into 2025, I'll be getting that prepared and ready, where I'm going to retool it, to work on the depth of the characters, to get the story flowing a little better, and to have to really step up the game to where you're going to when you see the new Sig and Joe compared to the old Sig and Joe, it's going to be a world of difference. So that's going to be my main focus, is rebooting Sig and Joe, and then getting that, and also getting the Ninja High School book ready too.
Well, and to be fair, Marvel and DC, well, specifically DC, if DC can have like 3 different reboots within about 10 years, everyone's allowed at least that one.
Oh yeah, and every day is a chance to meet a new reader. So
true. Yeah,
it's a handful of people know about 1 and 2. If I have that novel up, or the graphic novel, I'm going to be meeting people brand new who have never read Sig and Joe, and that'll be their first experience, and that'll be me putting my best foot forward. And plus it's the improvement, and it's always a new day, especially in the indie world. Marvel doesn't have that ability, or DC doesn't have that ability to meet someone who hasn't heard of Spider-Man. Every day I meet people who've never heard of Sig and Joe. So, you're always got a chance for a new customer, a new reader, and a new super fan.
And Michael says he's almost as white as me. That's crazy. I love it. Last thing I'll ask you, man, is you got any shout outs? Going to get to anyone in particular? Anything else you want to say before we close out?
I just wanted to give a shout out to my best friend and co-worker in a lot of my projects, Max Weston. He's a big supporter. I wouldn't be here without his moral support, his pushing me and helping me, and I just like to give a big shout out to him. He's the reason why I haven't gone crazy doing this stuff, and got me into the position where I'm at.
Awesome. Can't wait to have you on for a 3rd appearance around the time you get Sig and Joe rebooted for a new #1, actually. Doing the full Marvel route. We're back to #1. Hell yeah, I got to inflate the sales. You're going to be on ICV2, top 10 bestseller.
Every issue is going to be #1, so I can get that sale.
Three-part miniseries, rebooted back to #1. That'd be insane. Honestly, if someone did do that, I wouldn't mind it, honestly. That's just how you would get it. No one's ever told me that either. Just doing a 3-part miniseries. Then your sequel is just a reboot back to #1 for the other second part.
Oh yeah. Well, Eric Powell of Goon, every arc is its own numbered arc. So it's like I want the Man in the Hat arc. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So he's constantly doing ones all the time. So it's possible.
He cracked the code. I like that guy. Well, we'll see you guys later. Hope you guys had a great day, and thank you guys for checking out this episode of the Iron Man Podcast, and we will see you guys